Good evening, faculty and students. Partnerships are one of the tools that should be in your toolbox to help developing global strategies. The outline for today's discussion, I'd like to talk about a few introductory remarks, talk about what partnerships are, why enter into a partnership, types of partnerships, typical partnership structures, partnership risks, strategic alignment and fit, and governance. I'll give a few examples of some partnerships you're probably familiar with. I've got a heading called Management for Success, which really is some of the closer things you need to look out for or manage to be successful in partnership. And since this is a scholarly venue, there are a number of relevant management theories that lend themselves to the study and evaluation of partnerships. And I'll identify a few of those. Okay, a few introductory remarks to get started. Of course, we all know globalization has led to an increase in mergers and acquisitions and direct foreign investment around the world. Partnerships have also seen a likewise increase in utility and use. Partnerships provide a strategic flexibility and speed of action, of changing market conditions to counter a competitor behavior, new entrants to the market, partner knowledge of local markets and institutions. It's generally accepted that partnerships can increase a firm's operational performance and profits. I put this note on the bottom. Social scientists would say that partnerships contribute to social well-being by reducing global knowledge gaps, and I guess that's true. As you learn from each other, certainly the gaps end up closing a little bit. Partnerships can be anti-competitive. To some extent, that's one of the desired outcomes if you're entering into a partnership, is to make it more difficult on your competitors. International partnerships represent about 70% of all partnerships. So international partnerships really are an essential element of growth strategy. What we're seeing today, particularly in down markets and different segments of the business landscape, is fierce competitors increasingly enter into partnerships together, sharing some of their most secretive intellectual property and know-how. A little bit strange. Didn't see much of that in the past, but things are changing for sure. Partnerships can be very risky. They should not be entered into without adequate due diligence. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Not only of the proposed partner, but also your own firm's ability to craft, implement, and execute a partnership. You really have to be very reflective on your own capability to be efficient and good at partnerships, and if not, you need to kind of shore that up before you get started. Certainly partnerships are here to stay. Firms do need to possess a high level of partnership and M&A development sophistication and implementation ability to use these tools as essential elements of growth. Differences in national culture are also significant risks to international partnership development and implementation. So here's my first cartoon. Sometimes you find yourself without many options. The cartoon here says there's a Venn diagram. One circle is the wrong place, and the other Venn diagram is the wrong time, and where they intersect is, unquote, at the bottom of the cartoon. Unfortunately, here is us. So sometimes a partnership might be the best strategy if you're really in a tough position, or even if you're not. But if you're looking for a different way to approach the market. So what are partnerships? Partnerships are a category of inter-firm linkages. They are not mergers and acquisitions. They are not majority or controlling investment positions in another firm, and they're not franchising. The essential characteristics of a partnership are that the partners remain independent firms. The partners will have different goals and objectives for the partnership, and that's okay so long as they don't work against each other. Partnerships share the benefits of the partnership. Partnership agreements must spell out dispute resolution mechanisms and governing law. Partnerships can be terminated relatively easy. That's one of the good things about a partnership also. And they can be horizontal or vertical, depending on market segments and so forth. Why do firms enter into partnerships? Well, of course, to create value from new opportunities that may exist in the marketplace, or to minimize value destruction that might be going on currently in your business. It's kind of a negative way to look at a positive, but essentially that is another reason why. Risk and investment sharing. Of course, if you can share the risk and investment with a partner rather than going alone, sometimes that makes good sense to do. It helps mitigate or eliminate barriers to entry, to maximize market access, to overcome economic or legislative impediments, and to gain market knowledge that through your partner that you yourself may not have. Another reason for entering into partnership is to get access to needed technology, due in part by the increased cost of research and development. If your partner has some technology or some capability that you need in your portfolio, then it makes good sense. So you can share the risk and investment for new product development or product adaptation. Production, product supply efficiencies, economies of scale, larger volumes that can result from two firms operating together can give some significant economic benefits. Speed to market. Of course, we're all concerned about cash generation, product life cycle curves and pressures. Partnership can be an effective way to get access to the market quicker. To secure partner intangibles, managerial skills, reputation, you have to be a little bit concerned about that also because the partner's looking at you and you've got a great brand reputation in the marketplace. You need to be careful about that. But certainly that's why you enter into partnership with somebody who has a good brand recognition in the marketplace because it'll help you because the idea is it'll help you enter the market more efficiently. Strategic flexibility in changing and uncertain markets, for sure. Partnerships give you the speed to react to some of those conditions. A few more points on why you'd enter into partnership. Increased organizational learning. That's really a byproduct of a partnership that's running effectively. You will learn from your partner all sorts of different things that you don't know. To maintain market leadership position, minimize transaction costs, increase synergies, really kind of the cost efficiency of doing things together as a partnership rather than going alone. The world is changing. Previously closed international markets are now opening. Markets have in some cases been closed or restricted for quite some time. Partnership may be the only channel to get access to the new market. You may not have enough time to learn all you need to learn, whereas a partner who's there has that experience and knowledge that can help out. And really all that's designed to overcome the challenges of going it alone, which can be fairly significant and in many cases may cause a firm not to venture out and go after new markets which they could be successful in. This slide identifies a number of types of partnerships. One we hear most about, of course, are joint ventures, minority equity investment positions in another firm, highlighting minority, non-controlling, equity swaps, non-equity joint agreements for a specific purpose. Maybe you want to have an agreement to collaborate on research and development, some manufacturing capacities, marketing, long-term sourcing agreements, distribution agreements, teaming agreements, other forms of cooperative business arrangements. But the key fundamental thing being that each of the firms remain independent firms, not securing a controlling interest in the other. A typical partnership structure, one is a joint venture company. In that case, you're creating with your partner a legally independent firm, a third company, if you will, which allocates ownership, operational, financial risks, and rewards to each partner. Can be newly formed or created from existing operations held by each partner. Partner may want to contribute assets that are underutilized into a joint venture, or the JV, once established, may capitalize and create new capabilities. Partners contribute assets and subsidies, particularly in the short run, hopefully just in the short run to get things going, to the joint venture company until it becomes a viable enterprise. Long-term intention for a joint venture is to have its own employees, P&L, completely independent and separate from the parents, and to thrive and grow and create value for the owners. Partnership risks, and I guess the briefing up until now has kind of been what you would expect to hear about developing a partnership, kind of the structure and some of the motivations and reasons why firms want to enter into partnerships. Next couple of slides are really based on many years' experience, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the partnership risks and strategic fit and some of the challenges. I guess the thing some people might think is partnerships should be fairly simple. Actually, they can be very difficult. And in fact, I would say they're always very difficult, some just more so than others. Sometimes there's a mismatch or non-alignment of the intention between the parties. And of course, you don't know that going into it. You find out only later on. Unfortunately, in some cases, not everything can be put into a partnership agreement. You try to put as much in there as you can. You try to contemplate all the challenges that the partnership might see, but it's impossible to contemplate everything. The initial chemistry and trust can be lost immediately when leadership changes occurred. So two independent firms decide to form a partnership. The leadership gets along fabulously with each other. Chemistry there, strategic fit seems to line up just exactly so. And then the partnership gets formed, and good chemistry, everything's operating fine, and suddenly one of the CEOs departs the company. A new CEO comes in, maybe has a different view on the partnership, kind of almost back to square one. In fact, sometimes it could even be worse than square one, because now you've got a partnership that may not work. So the initial chemistry and trust can be lost immediately, and you've got to monitor that and really shepherd that and take care of that as you're growing a partnership, not only in development of the partnership, but when you're executing and implementing the partnership with your partner firm. Larger firms typically reap larger benefits. Generally speaking, they have less information gaps and greater resources, and because of that, they can typically achieve greater partnership benefits, but not always. The smaller partner can many times do exceedingly well, or maybe even have greater benefits than larger firm. This is just an example. Typically, larger firms reap larger benefits. Non-equity partnerships can be terminated quickly. That's good and bad. It's good if you're the one who wants it to be terminated. Maybe not so good if you wouldn't like the partnership to be terminated. You'd like for it to go on a little bit longer. In a partnership, you have less control over the decision-making process and decisions in general. Clearly, if you do an M&A and you own the company that you've targeted, investigated, and now you own them, you have, of course, absolute control over the decisions that are made that affect that company. In a partnership, you don't. The management team on the other, in the partner company, also gets a vote, and so you just have less, let's say, unilateral control over the decision-making process in a partnership than you would if you bought a company outright. And this point is really important. In international partnerships, you really must have evidence, and I guess it kind of goes into the next slide, that your partner can really get things done in their country. I mean, that's part of the reason why you're entering into a partnership with that particular partner for that particular market. A couple more points on partnership risks. Partners typically have different thresholds for risk and uncertainty. And certainly that's something that many times you don't find out about until you get into a partnership with another firm. You work in a project and, things happen as part of the normal business cycle. That's when you can really see how your partner thinks about risk and uncertainty and how they themselves manage through those two things. I would say by far the greatest risk is that management on one side or the other does not have a clear vision of what they want to achieve in the partnership. It sounds a little bit simple to say that, but it's actually not. It can be very complicated. That uncertainty can lead to changes in direction, can contribute to unstable decision-making process, and it may even result in the loss of interest in one of the partners for no apparent reason. And you need also to contemplate if and when your partner becomes your competitor. If it's possible, how do you prevent or mitigate the negative effects? Part of the partnership agreement will probably require you to share intellectual property and know-how, and the other firm also with you. So how do you manage that? And where do you draw the line as to what's shareable and what's not shareable without doing too much harm to a partnership? Strategic alignment and fit. I would say for a partnership, it's as essential to do the due diligence that you would in an M&A, as much and as rigorous as you would for an M&A, you should do it for a partnership also. Strategic alignment and fit, the alignment of the partner's intentions and capabilities, is extremely important and essential for success. Strategic fit creates mutual dependencies, which are essential for long-term success. Those mutual dependencies are the reason why you enter into partnership, because you find a partner that has a capability or a resource you don't have. You become dependent upon each other, and it really is essential. Resource-based view, a couple theories out there about that. Resource-based theory of the firm, Wernerfeld, 1984, basically says you have 4 sets of resources in your company, in your firm, in comparison to another firm. And when you look at those resources, they're either supplementary to each other, surplus to the partnership, complementary, or wasteful. So going through this sort of analysis on the resources and capabilities that each partner brings to a partnership is essential to understand exactly how and in what context each partner will contribute to each other. Resource dependency theory also simply says that it's a strategy to be dependent on external resources, and that's fine. You can get those external resources through a partnership in this case. Essential elements of value creation from a partnership strategy, there's really 3. One, you have to have, or should have, a high level of alignment between the importance of a partnership and the partner's missions. Number 2, you should have a high level of alignment between the partner strategies. Seems like that should be pretty much common sense, but sometimes if you're not careful, you don't examine that the way you should. The third thing is you need to really strive for a high level of alignment in the shared values between the partners. That's particularly true when you're working in international partnership, where you may have people from other cultures who have different value sets than yours. Not judging one or the other, or the goodness of one versus the other, but just know that they can be different. And Does it mean anything to your partnership? Maybe, maybe not. Just need to know about that going in. On this slide, you can't see the cartoon here on the audio file. It's being recorded, but it's a dog looking into a fish bowl with probably a goldfish in there, and the dog is saying to the fish, "You make a good point. We both hate the cat. I'm just not sure what it is you'd bring to the partnership." So you have to really dig deep, and while on the surface it may appear that you're aligned with the partner to achieve a partnership objectives, you also really need to understand and assess their ability to deliver what you need them to deliver as part of the partnership. In this case, the fish doesn't have much capacity or capability to do much against the cat, I'm afraid. Governance of a partnership, just like any other sort of formal arrangement, good governance model is essential and must be established up front. Be as specific and detailed as possible. You can't leave it to be undefined. If you do, you're gonna find yourself in that space pretty quick and not have any agreed upon rules as to how to work your way through the challenges you're facing. It may be tempting when mentioned earlier that the chemistry and the fit seems to be good and the CEOs seem to get along so well, you just can't possibly see a day when your firm and the other firm may not get along. It's tempting in that environment not to be too specific in terms of governance model and how you're going to contemplate challenges that the partnership will have. Well, rest assured, one day one of the CEOs will no longer be the CEO of that partner firm. Then what? Well, if you haven't anticipated this and contemplated it and made provisions for it, then you're kind of stuck. You're not really sure how to work your way through the challenges that you might find yourself in. A good governance model should also include what's included in the partnership, kind of the scope of the partnership, what's in the partnership, what's not in the partnership. Two fairly large companies with a lot of products in their portfolio may develop a partnership for a particular product area or technology area or market. That's fine, but then the partnership itself might start encroaching on other products that you have, or you may want to do the same with your partner. And well, what can happen is that it can be unwanted because you don't really need a partnership for some of these other products that you have or technology areas that you have, and you just have to manage your way through that. So it's best up front to kind of draw a box around what's included in this partnership and what the partners are trying to achieve. Roles and responsibilities of the management team is very important to be included in the governance model. Decision-making criteria, how do you make the decisions? And sounds simple, but really, how do you make decisions, and what happens if the parties can't agree? There's a voting process typically that goes on for certain things. How do you want to specify that to ensure that you're satisfied when you get into those challenges that undoubtedly every partnership has? You certainly must include a provision for resolution of disputes, a process to resolve disputes within the partnership, be it arbitration, should identify governing law, jurisdiction. Hopefully you don't get to that point. I've seen partnership agreements crafted that really do not allow dispute resolution to get past the two CEOs. So there's a number of steps in committees, if you will, that work your way up to finally the two CEOs deciding if on the dispute. And then if they can't decide, then they have the choice of whether the partnership survives or doesn't survive without going outside into the court of law and arbitration and external parties. It's generally a good idea to have a termination date to the partnership. If for no other reason, it causes both parties to kind of review on that date certain the progress that the partnership has made, and make an objective decision whether both parties hopefully want the partnership to continue. If not, it provides a convenient exit ramp for one of the other partners if the agreement really isn't yielding what they had hoped it would yield, or if the partnership for some reason just doesn't seem to be working the way you'd like it to. Governance model must be workable, and by that I mean really it needs to survive personnel changes. And so it needs to be written as objectively as possible. Good governance should try to operationalize trust. I got on my slide a big, that's a tough one to do. It's a very tough one to do. But I think the spirit of a partnership should embody a certain amount of trust granting from one to the other, and encourage both partners to continue to work within a trustful way. Once that breaks down, the partnership really is kind of in trouble. Research shows high trust partnerships perform better. That shouldn't be a surprise. I don't think it is to anybody. It just does. Different levels required based on investment, different levels of trust based on the investment you have in the partnership. And it can be difficult, sometimes impossible, to establish the level of trust needed in a partnership. You hope to have it, you form the partnership, and for some reason it just doesn't operationalize the way you'd like it to or thought it should. And chances are it's a little bit on both parties as to why it didn't happen that way, not just one or the other. Sometimes it's because of differing objectives, different management styles, different decision-making styles. I have here national and organizational cultures, differences there, negotiating strategies. So for a whole range of reasons, partners can just not see eye to eye sufficient enough to operationalize the trust factor between the two firms, which is often needed to have the partnership perform at the highest level. Some partnership examples identified here. In the simplest way, we've all seen the airlines and code sharing partnership agreements where they have the same asset base flying airplanes, but everybody's kind of, not everybody, but the partners are selling tickets on behalf of the other one on their flights, and put together a global network so that customers hopefully never have to leave their particular partnership to get where they want to go. And I would say that's been very successful for the airlines the last probably 20 years in particular. There's been a number of partnerships really in pretty much every sector you can think of. Pharmaceuticals is loaded with partnership examples. The defense industry in the United States is a little bit less so, kind of slow to catch on to it really, but it has, and there are some significant ones there. Telecommunications and IT industry just thrive on partnerships and rely on partnerships. The speed of technological change, the rate of change, back to resource theory, resource dependency. You know, companies just can't have all the resources they need in that kind of a highly changing technology and consumer markets. So partnerships are essential for them to create the offering that they need to offer to be successful. Management for success, really have to have a strategy. You really have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your firm, what kind of gaps you have in resources and capabilities that you need to try to satisfy with a partnership if that's the way to do it. Have to vision for yourself what does success look like. Not if it's a perfect world kind of a thing, because it's never a perfect world, but what are the targets that you would set up for a partnership, and what does that look like? And from that, then you can drive down into your analysis to understand exactly what you need to do and what you need to achieve from a partnership. So you have to have, goes without saying in the strategy course, but you really have to have a strategy for partnerships before you get into one, like many other business transactions. Conduct a professional due diligence of various partners. Same as M&A, you do your legal due diligence, technical, market access, customers. You really need to understand as deeply as you can the capabilities that your partner brings to the partnership. Try to know the best you can the desired business model for the partnership, and from that, and you should be able to estimate the value that can be created by the partnership and establish the metrics to measure your performance. Exit ramp, you should have exit ramps built into the agreement. We talked about before about having a date certain for termination of the agreement unless both parties agree to extend it. That provides a very convenient exit ramp for one party or the other to exit the partnership if the expectations are not achieved. And then, of course, rank the potential partners and then initiate contact. There's a number of ways. If you're not familiar with the firm that you'd like to discuss a partnership with, you kind of need to find a way to get to the senior leaders there to begin to have a discussion about partners. But having done your due diligence, knowing that company very, very well, knowing yourself very, very well, your capabilities, what you're capable of doing, what you're not capable of doing, should help you formulate the strategy that you can articulate to a potential partner that shows the benefits to both companies by having such a partnership. And when you have that level of kind of fact-based, evidence-based assessment as to what the partnership can do and achieve, it makes it much easier to go talk to a potential partner about actually partnering with you. Now, what we like to do, my experience in my business life is, in this case, we like to really consider a partnership as potentially as a test drive before you. If you really like the company, you can enter into a partnership with them, see how it works, and if you're working very well together, then you could end up buying the company, turning them into a target, into an M&A transaction. It's kind of a brilliant way to really validate your thoughts on a company before you actually acquire it. Particularly since the failure rate is so high for M&As, generally in the neighborhood of 70% of the time the buyer does not achieve the value that he or she would hope to achieve. Sometimes a partnership will convert to an M&A if the partnership goes so well and one party or the other thinks it could be even better if we owned our partner. Then it can convert into that. And then typically additional synergies are identified when the partnership becomes operational. So once it gets up and running, everything that you plan for, you and your partner in the partnership, within the partnership agreement and partnership management team, when it gets up and running and you see the synergies that are available and becomes operational, it could also lead to one desire by one or the other partner to acquire the other company. So it's not a bad strategy if you're looking for growth through M&A. I mean, partnerships can be partnerships by themselves can create all the value that you hope to achieve. If you look at, for example, a lot of different metrics, return on invested capital, very, very low, return very, very high. I mean, the invested capital can be very, very low, the return can be very, very high. Or if you really have a strategy to test drive, if you will, a partnership agreement with another company before you consider them as an M&A target, that's not a bad strategy either. Here's the list of doing research on partnerships. You will come up with a number of management theories that relate to partnerships. I've listed some of them here. The ones that I believe myself fit, I guess I'm the biggest fan of, are really the resource-based theories. So resource-based theory of the firm, resource-based theory of alliances, resource dependency theory. And of course the theme there, it's all about the resources, and you want to enter into a partnership with a company who can provide you with something you don't have. And they want you to provide them something they don't have. And so that forms a great foundation for a partnership when you have this mutual dependency or resource dependency on each other. Evidence shows that the partnership has a greater chance of being successful and having a longer life than a situation where resources are duplicative or surplus to a partnership. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of my presentation on partnerships. We covered a lot of ground, from why firms enter into partnerships, why it makes sense, some of the aspects of governance that you need to be careful about, big discussion on strategic fit and the importance of strategic fit in partnership development.
We do have a question from Diana. Is it more important to have chemistry with a potential partner than the business objectives meshing?
Well, I think you have to like each other, because there's probably a lot of different firms you could partner with in terms of capabilities that align with the capabilities that you're deficient with or in. And I'm not so sure which one's most important. Maybe it's context specific. If you're entering in a new market, let's say an international growth strategy, and to be successful in that market, it's a large market, it's just opened up for different reasons. Maybe there's a new global trade agreement that now makes it easier for your firm to do business there. If there's really just one logical partner in terms of capabilities, then, you know, maybe the chemistry is not as important if you can get everything else right. But if there's 5 or 6 different companies there that any of them would be a good partner, then, you know, in that case, maybe the chemistry is extremely important, because at the end of the day, you hope that you like each other and get along. So I guess I would answer that by saying it may be context specific, and I don't really know which one's more important than the other. Really depends on the situation, I think. Good question.
Right, and my question is about durability of the partnership. If I heard it right, you mentioned that the companies seek partners because they want access to either products or technology or markets, and they may be lacking in one or more of these, and they find a partner who can provide. And so the termination of a partnership takes place if the partnership is not yielding what it was designed to. Also, if I heard it right, you were saying it can also terminate if it achieves what it set out to do. In other words, if both sides have now gained what they wanted, then why would they want to stay inside the partnership? So how do they terminate it when they think that they have achieved their purpose and they've succeeded in what they set out to do, and maybe now they can do it on their own?
Oh, that's a wonderful point, Dr. Bijlani. And so, for example, if 2 firms are cooperating together to develop a new technology, and that's the purpose of the partnership, the measure of success is when the partnership has developed this new technology and both parties get the rights that they want out of that development. Yeah, then the partnership really has no longer a reason to remain valid, unless for some other reason the partners want to extend it and expand it. So you're exactly right. Partnership can go on up until partnerships can terminate with success, and they can also terminate with failure.
Okay. That's a great point. So when they set the partnership up, the termination clause typically include both these scenarios of success and failure.
Well, I mean, if it's a market access type of partnership, really to help each other increase their order intakes, yeah, it could, you could do that, but chances are, if you have a good partnership going and you love the way the revenue's coming and the margins are there, you probably just want to sustain and keep it going. But you're right. I mean, the partnership agreement is really up for the partners to decide and describe however they see the mission and purpose of the partnership. Mm-hmm. And so, whether it's an idea to jointly develop a technology and that's the purpose, and once they achieve that, it's no longer a partnership, it dissolves, or if they want to continue on, it's all in the crafting of the partnership agreement between the parties that dictates how they want to do that, for sure.
Well, we have time for a few more questions.
This is Rosano. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rosano. I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. My understanding is you have a partnership. And how do you evaluate the aspect of success and not being successful within that? Do you do it within a performance measurement, within the time frame, when you're doing with your partnership, within a time frame saying, well, we haven't succeeded in anything or we have succeeded something, and do you measure, how you measure success? Because to be successful, one partner could be different than another partner. So how do you know if your partner is really being pulling the weight, or the partnership is really flourishing if you don't have nothing to measure? How do you measure the performance?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would say it starts right back in the very beginning when you're doing due diligence on the potential partner. And so you really want to know what they should be able to deliver to the partnership, and also understand maybe some of the reasons why they can't deliver what you want into the partnership. So fundamentally, going in that, I think my partner ought to be able to do this for me. And so if that's the case, then you write in the partnership agreement, or you have knowledge of, what you want out of the partnership. And that's why I particularly like the termination provisions with a date certain. Because if partnership is valid for 5 years and then, renewable upon the mutual consent of the parties, you both agree to renew it. If you see that, there's no reason why this partner has everything I need, but yet they continue to withhold in the partnership the things that I need, the things that the partnership needs to be successful. And you can get frustrated about that. You can have, good governance. You can have discussions about that, run it up to the CEOs of both companies, but yet still the partner just doesn't deliver what you think they should deliver in good faith under the terms of the partnership agreement and what they said they would achieve. Then at least you have, at the end of a date certain, you've got a time where you can say you can dissolve the partnership, or the partnership will dissolve unless both parties agree to keep it going. But hopefully, from the very beginning what you want. And so if it's just like an M&A transaction on your target, what kind of sales revenue you ought to be able to achieve by acquiring that firm. You should know what kind of technology you'll have access to, how much of their own capital they will put into marketing this newly developed product or your product in their market. But you should really know all that going in, and then once you do, then you can kind of measure that and then express your frustrations with the partner if they don't deliver.
Thank you.
It was a very good question, because it sometimes it's difficult for the partner who thinks that the other party is not delivering the way they should. Sometimes there's a reluctance to say anything. You know, partnerships are complex, you know, living organisms, and you really don't want to be the one to be too disruptive in that. But on the other hand, if it's not working out, it's not going to work out.
Do you find any aspect of when you're dealing with partnership, if you're dealing with companies, entities, you know, and connecting to like the cultural values and norms that are pertaining to release of access to capital, or that you need within that you have to go through some residual aspect of their business norms, especially like international business? You're doing, like you've been in a situation that you want partners in Europe and one partner is in Asia, and they expect stuff to go a little faster, or the other ones a little slower. Is there any scenario like that?
Absolutely, and I think the biggest frustration that a lot of firms have is the speed or lack of speed in the decision-making cycle, and some of that's culturally driven. In the U.S., we're very CEO-centric, and you know, if the CEO wants to drive something, I've not been in too many companies where it doesn't happen, and sometimes very quickly. And a lot of people along the way might say, I'm not really sure why we're doing that. It doesn't seem the best thing to do, but that's what we're going to do, and let's go forward and let's make it happen. There's plenty of other cultures around the world which aren't as individualistic as ours, as the U.S. culture is, and where it's a little more communal, and the decision-making cycle is much more communal as well. So by that I mean it's more of a group decision, and typically there's many more people who have input into major decisions. It takes longer, and if you're watching that occur and you're not used to the slowness of that process, it can be very frustrating. And you may think they're stalling, you may think they're not interested, and that's why you really need to understand the difference in the national cultural aspect of the partner you're entering into partnership with, and try to estimate or forecast what their behavior probably will look like once you're into the relationship with them. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is if you become distrustful of your partner, you think they're going slow, they're not acting quick enough, the market opportunity is going to go away because they're going too slow. Well, maybe they're just going as fast as they can, they're just not going to go any faster. And so that's a great question, and you're exactly right. But I think, you know, that kind of information is knowable if you study national cultures and some of the attributes of differences in national culture. You should be able to kind of do that even in your due diligence phase.
We still have time for maybe one last question.
Sure. I was just asking, when you're exploring, you know, the elements of a potential partnership, how do you protect your company if you decide not to pursue that partnership? Would you utilize an NDA or something like that?
Yeah, well, first, I mean, fundamentally, you really do your own kind of desktop, or use some external consultants who can help you really do a good due diligence on that partner, number one. And then once you decide that that company seems to be a good fit from all the different aspects that are important to you, then certainly the first, you know, you approach them and explain to them what you're thinking about, and if they seem interested, then the first thing you would do is to sign an NDA, number one, to keep the whole discussions confidential so that others in the market don't know the two of you are discussing a potential partnership, but also to give you time to work through and get to know each other a little bit better and study each other better to see if there is enough there for the partnership that you think should be there.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bijlani and Dr. Mittal and students. Thank you for sharing the last hour or so with me. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you have as well.